Work out. You gotta eat, you gotta go to the gym, you gotta do these things to change the world. And I'm just gonna hold it up. I have 3 ideas. I got 3 ideas. I'm gonna share these 3 ideas. We just got here, I didn't know we were doing this. So this is straight from the heart. Number 1, oppression is fractal by nature. It's like leadership. It exists in recurring patterns all over the world in all communities. So what happens in Ferguson happens to Turkish kids in Dusseldorf, Germany. It happens to Moroccan kids in Brussels, Belgium. It happens to kids that are not of the right nationality in sub-Saharan Africa. This is a reality that exists everywhere, over time, over space, over language, over religion, everywhere. Oppression is fractal by nature. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that there can be a systematized approach to relieving people from oppressive realities. Right? It means that this is not magical. We don't need a spell. We don't need a wizard. What we need are people that are willing to work. What we need are people that know how to use an Excel spreadsheet. What we need are people that have enough positivity in their heart. Where's the brother talking about love? Right here. What we need is people that are acting from a source of love. Love. For all of humanity, not just the oppressed. Even for the oppressor, there must be love in your heart in order for you to be able to bring about a change in the realities that we're seeing in the world today. So if oppression is fractal by nature, relieving oppression is fractal by nature. It is a systematized approach to empowering individuals in order that they be able to speak for themselves and act for themselves and revolt in the manner that they feel is most appropriate. And your job is to ensure that there is an atmosphere that is conducive to a sustainable engagement in relieving oppression. That's why you're here. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking here. Julia White, I see you. That's why we're here. Right? The reason you are here is to understand how the world works. Is to understand the architecture of oppression. And to understand the architecture of social change. Right? Like if you see going to class every day as a distinct issue from what we're dealing with today, we are not winning. We are not winning. Relieving oppression is about creating jobs. Relieving oppression is about transparency in legal systems. Relieving oppression is about knowing what case to bring to what court in order to bring about justice in the reality that exists in that community. So oppression is fractal by leadership, by definition. Just like your leadership is fractal by definition. Number 2, a lot of people talk about change starts with you. And sometimes they talk about that as though you're the one that needs to change, not the system of racism and oppression that needs to change. No, you gotta reject that understanding of the phrase, change starts with you. No, change starts with you in the sense that it is up to you to have a literacy that allows for you to understand the nature of the oppression that exists in the situation that you are attempting to change. It means that you have the courage and education to call oppression oppression and not to call it something else. It means that you have the confidence to speak of lingual racism, of our categorization and pigeonholing of identities and ways of life and people that have existed much longer than we or our civilization has. Right? It requires for you to understand what is happening around you and to be able to speak to it. So often we talk about ghettos, physical ghettos. And so rarely do we talk about paradigmatic ghettoization. That ghetto that exists in your own mind, your own mindset that is oppressing you into believing that either you can't bring change, or you're not worthy of being a leader, or because you were born in this or that context, this effort is not for you. Right? That is a paradigmatic ghettoization. And just as we have to work to relieve the structural realities that exist to intentionally create ghettos of economic impoverishment and educational dilapidation, we need to also among each other be able to deconstruct the ghettoization that exists in our own mind. You have to lead from within. You have to begin to deconstruct your own baggage. So that when you come to a place in life, like tomorrow or the day after, when the world is looking for you to lead, you gotta be ready to lead. You gotta be ready to lead. That means you have to deal with what's going on inside. And you gotta deconstruct all of that ghettoization that exists in your mind about your mom and your dad and your studies and what you're studying and what you're not studying and what you're doing and what countries you haven't been to and how much money you don't have. These are all realities that exist in your mind. But we cannot change the structural realities that exist in the world unless you begin to change the way you are thinking about yourself. No one else here is a leader unless you are an undergraduate student at this university in this room right now. You are the leader. And your ability to convince yourself of such is a necessary prerequisite to us changing these racist realities within which we live. Not just as Americans, as people all over the world. As people all over the world. They taught you about Martin Luther King and put him on your calendar to convince you that the civil rights movement is over. No, you are Martin Luther King. You are Martin Luther King. You are Malcolm X. You are John Kennedy. You are Rosa Parks. You are the people that got to change this reality. The civil rights movement is not over because you're not over. And if you do your job right, young people that will come after you will have a civil rights movement to be a part of. So we got to change our mindset and how we see ourselves. Finally, I'm sorry, I'm speaking too much.
Take your time.
Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we need to balance idealism and pragmatism. We need to engage in a discourse that is mature and has marinated in its understanding of what can and what cannot change at what cost. That requires for you to really come to an understanding of what do you really believe in? What do you believe in? What kind of world do you want to see? That's a conversation you have to have with yourself from today until the day you die. But you gotta work for tangible change. People are oppressed today. People can't eat today. People don't have jobs today. So we must balance. There are cops beating young people today. So we must balance between the idealism of youth, between the beautiful ability of a young person to perceive a vision, a potentiality that has not yet come to fruition, while at the same time working in tangible and concrete ways right now to change the realities that exist in our communities that we are all here because we reject. When you work on this issue, you are not just working for black people in St. Louis. You are not just working for Latinos in Southern California. You are working for young people all over the world who are not enfranchised, who are not included, who are not integrated economically, sociologically, politically into the societies from which they come. And those young people are waiting for what you are waiting for them to do. Rise up. To rise up by doing these three things. Understanding that oppression is fractal and its alleviation can be organized and executed. By understanding that change starts with your perception of yourself and more importantly your perception of your ability to be a part of the change that needs to happen. And number three, your ability to balance that beautiful excitement and idealism of youth with a pragmatism of understanding that there is oppression that exists right now that must be alleviated. And so let me end with the ideal. When they created this country, they wrote a bunch of articles in New York newspapers. Then they collected those articles and published them in a book called the Federalist Papers. Alexander Hamilton wrote in the first paragraph of the first Federalist, "It seems to have been left to the people of this nation by their conduct and example to determine the question whether man will forever be destined to be ruled by fear and force, or whether we can build a constitution and a way of life that is sourced in reflection and choice." That is the mission statement of this country. To yield to its citizens and the people of the world equal ability to reflect upon their options and choose a course of life for themselves and their families and their communities and their societies. That's where we're trying to get to in this country. And you are the people that will get us there. You have my love and respect. Have a great night.